The third session is in the series of 5 about communities of meaning, conducted by a team sponsored by the University of Divinity and the Christian Research Association. The speaker is Dr. Stephen Reid. Stephen has been a researcher for the Christian Research Association and the National Centre for Pastoral Research for nearly 20 years. He's had a lot of experience in both qualitative and quantitative research. In recent years, he's completed a doctorate which examined the effectiveness of chaplaincy in sporting organisations. One of the characteristics of chaplaincy, compared with other counselling roles, is that chaplains build relationships with people before there are issues to be resolved. And people then turn to the chaplain when needs arise. These relationships may shed some light on our issues today, of how social relationships contribute to meaning in life. Stephen's other interest is in sporting organisations, and he has much to contribute about how sporting organisations can contribute to meaning in life.
Thank you, Philip. And good morning. It's still morning. Mine will be the final session before lunch today, so just hope you can hang in there just a little bit longer before we enjoy lunch together. As the title of my paper implies, I'm going to look at how sport and leisure communities or groups play an important role in enriching life in retirement. I do this not from the perspective of one who is retired yet, but rather using the voices and the wisdom of those who are in retirement or semi-retirement. I'm going to try and keep my focus on those who said they are involved with sporting and leisure communities in our research, although there's obvious overlap with other groups as well. For example, there's a walking group organised through a local church or a church community. Is that a leisure community or is it a church community? Or perhaps a neighbourhood group also becomes a community of sport. The involvement of those in a sporting and leisure community may be, the way I've looked at it, is those involved as an active participant or a competitor in an organised sport, such as those who play golf or cricket or bowls, as was the case. That involvement may be as a volunteer, obviously as a participant as well, as an administrator or a coach, or an official or other non-playing role. Or the involvement may not be sport-related, such as going to the gym or walking or yoga. And of course, there's also the issue of trying to define and classify sport and leisure. So what is sport? Well, just as an aside, it was George Orwell who wrote in 1945 that sport is war minus the shooting. Now, I'm going to take a little bit less inflammatory approach with my own definition, and of course, like many things, sport is often defined by our social interpretation anyway. But for our purposes today, I've defined it as sport is simply a rules-based activity organised which requires some physical exertion, but also may involve some level of skill. Now, we don't want to have an argument about whether you agree or disagree, but I needed to come up with some definition. So what about leisure? Well, this is a bit more complicated to define because leisure, if you think about it as a definition, is actually about having free time from the demands of work or duty. So in a sense, it's about actually doing nothing with one's time. But in practical terms, and for this presentation, leisure can be anything that isn't work or doesn't require too many demands. With my analysis of the interview data, the 71 interviews, as you'll perhaps notice in one of my slides in a moment, I've been very relaxed about what activities are included as sport and what activities are included as leisure as a whole. I hope I've been generous with including some of those activities in the leisure category. But I'm also aware that there's many overlaps between sport and leisure, so I don't want to be too stringent with those definitions as well. But I do hope that gives you a bit of a sense of where I'm trying to come from. You have to have guardrails at some point. And there's much wisdom in the voices of the 71 people who volunteered to be interviewed for this project. And it's been quite a privilege, really, to be able to tap into such insightfulness from them. So as part of my presentation now, I'm going to try and focus on them and let the participants do the talking as much as possible. So I'm going to use direct quotes where I think they are relevant to what I want to say. When I read through the range of activities that the research participants were involved with, I was quite surprised with the diversity. If you can look at some of those, you'll see some of the examples there. Perhaps the usual ones I was thinking about were the golf, the yoga, going for walks, going to the gym, that sort of thing. But it's quite extensive just in the 71 people that we talked to. The one I was captured with was the Harley-Davidson motorcycle riders, but also motorcycle riders in general. There was touch footy there, there's line dancing. I've thrown in book club, whether you consider that a leisure activity or not. There were sort of examples there that I think it sort of can be classified. Martial arts and also crafting I've thrown in there as well. So some of the activities of those activities were organised activities through a group or a community, such as the local church quite often, the U3A, which our previous two speakers have talked about already, or a community house very often. For those undertaking the sporting activities, often, but not always, these were through a club or an organisation, such as those that were playing golf or the bowls. And sometimes those activities were less formal and fluid in structure. For example, there was a group of men who have been swimming once a week for nearly 20 years. Is that a sporting club? Is it a more leisure? Not that it necessarily matters. I had one of the participants there that described that as like a wet men's shed. So good example of other categories that could fall into this leisure activity as well. So other involvement activities were similarly less formalised, such as one friendship group who go walking together for an hour or so every morning. But often there was overlap between organised activities and informal activities. So in the words of one couple here, the exercise class, once again, is important for that interaction of conversation. Even though you go to the exercise class, we often have coffee afterwards. And it's for that social interaction to keep your mind going, to make you feel good. If you feel good, the world goes round. Sometimes involvement in those groups were intentional or thought out, and we talked a little bit about the intentionality of thinking about retirement. But other times the involvement happened out of the blue or just organically. For one participant, it wasn't intentional to find a new community. It was totally unexpected. But it's just a delightful community. And some of the blokes I got to know extremely well, others less so. In reading through and listening to the research participants, it was evident that involvement in sporting and leisure activities and communities during retirement had significant benefits, which contributed to each individual's sense of meaning and purpose in life. I'm thinking about even just I think it's 10 people that I interviewed. You could sense the importance of each community or each group as soon as you asked that question. Tell me about the group. You could see their eyes light up as they describe their involvement and the people within the group and the range of benefits that the group adds to their life in retirement. So I've tried to somewhat consolidate the benefits into 7 nice and tidy categories, although I expect it would not be that hard for me to add additional categories or even subcategories. But again, one does have to draw the line somewhere. And whilst this list of 7, it's not in any order and is derived mostly from those participants who were involved with sporting or leisure communities in the research, I think each of the benefits can most certainly be applied to involvement in most other types of groups as well. So firstly, maintaining physical health. This was perhaps a relatively obvious one, the importance of regular activity or exercise, no matter what your age, I think, has its benefits: endurance, strength, mobility, energy, weight control, disease, etc. And most of the participants recognised the importance of maintaining good physical health as you get older, but not just to live longer, but to lead a better life overall. Said one participant, "I think it's actually improved my health since I retired. And I don't puff quite as much on some of the hills I used to puff on, but also when you're with that same group of people every week for 2 or 3 hours, and we talk as we walk, of course, and that's a good social thing." However, for many of the participants, maintenance of physical health wasn't the sole reason for involvement in their activity, as that comment suggests. It was just one of a number of benefits, including the next one. Maintaining mental and cognitive well-being, and both our speakers already have talked about this a little bit. Many participants were well aware of maintaining their mental and cognitive well-being as they got older, particularly as they moved from the busyness of perhaps a career, a working life, into the less structured, less busy life of retirement for many of them, or semi-retirement. One participant noted such struggles. He said, "I go for a walk 20 or 30 minutes, 5 or 6 days a week. So physically I have no problems, no major problem anyway, but mentally I'm very conscious that I'm not the way I would like to be. In fact, it took me a long time to accept that for possibly the majority of people as we get older, we get less and less able mentally." For another participant, mental health maintenance was the pivotal element in all of the other benefits that he got from participating. He said, "What I find interesting in both those groups," that is, he was involved with the cycling and swimming groups, "is that the folks really, we often talk about how important that it is, more about our mental health than the physical stuff is a benefit. But it's actually a mental health thing. I find it a very empowering and powerful sort of a group." High praise for his cycling and swimming groups there. This third benefit, providing structure and routine. I sense this benefit is so important in that early retirement period, although as this next comment will show, it's equally important at other stages in retirement as well. One of my interviewees, a male member of a golf club, shared with me about the importance of his golfing community after his wife had died about 1 year earlier. He said, "It's companionship, and it's just so important to be able to communicate with other people. I can't think of anything more lonely than a house on your own. I can't be bothered cooking tea. Why cook tea for one person?" So I'm still in the doldrums on that side. I've still got a long way to go, but the importance of doing things with other people is very important. There's almost a rawness there still in his voice as he speaks. A fourth benefit there that I pulled out of the data was providing social connection and friendship. Of course, one of the main contributing reasons for many to join a group, whether it's a sporting group or a leisure community or group, is for the social connection and the friendships that inevitably arise as they become more involved. 2 comments here. One from a female here. "Yeah, I think the main thing is I like to do exercises, and if I exercise by myself, I'll be doing just walking. But when I go to praise dance," yes, it's a thing, "at least it's moving the whole body. And because it's enjoyable company, I'm a person that needs people. So I like to, at least you do something all together and then it's more fun. This comment from a male. The bushwalking definitely helps you get out, to have that contact with other people who are like-minded and share each other's faith, and also to get out and share other people's perspectives. In terms of the social connection and loneliness, he says, I think it helps them just as much as it helps us. A fifth benefit that I came up with there is about providing support and care. And this can be done in numerous ways, obviously, but this is often something which is unintentional and just happens organically, and which many of the participants inferred through their comments rather than explicitly mentioning it as a benefit as such. And I hope two of the comments here will expound on a little bit about what I mean here. So the first one from a lady. So we meet in town every Monday. We walk for about an hour and a half. We sit and have a cuppa afterwards. And it contributes enormously to my well-being. I just find those people delightful. And we do contact each other via text messages and whatever during the week as well. So I had two of them call me this week. They know that I'm facing surgery. So it's just a really supportive, lovely, fun group. And so it's about fitness and fun, but it's also about that friendship. Another comment from a male. I suspect there are quite a few within the golf club who go because they have found that found the people there that they are accepted, they're cared for, they're loved, their quirks and the foibles are ignored. You know, all those things, but it's they make a choice to come there. Not because it's cheap, because it's not cheap. Not because there is any social expectations, but because they're there, because they enjoy the community. A sixth benefit, 6 of 7, that I came up with is providing a sense of purpose and meaning in life. This benefit revealed itself in multiple ways, which I think really highlights how different people experience meaning in their life and what they need to give them that sense of purpose in life as well. For I would say probably all the participants, there was not one thing, one group or one involvement in a community which provided them with their sense of meaning and purpose in life. Rather, it was a combination of multiple areas in their life. I expect that would make sense. And my hunch is that a lot of retired people can identify those areas a lot easier than many younger people as well. One comment I heard from a participant provided quite an interesting addition, I think, to what makes life worthwhile for some people. He said, again, one of my golfing interviewees, I don't play very good golf, but I am a very competitive golfer. See, there is a difference, I think, and I think he's right. And yeah, I get a great deal of pleasure from being in a situation where I can compete. But now nothing depends on it. But I can't imagine getting the same sort of satisfaction from sitting playing Ludo or, Tiddlywinks or something. It's not just the exercise, though. It's in fact being able to be part of a competing group. And I somewhat share the sentiments of that man. Not about the golf, because I'm not a golfer, but about being competitive, of which I am. And I don't think that's just a male characteristic. I think it's more so an individual trait, perhaps. And this individual that I talked with would testify to the fact that competitiveness, being competitive, doesn't necessarily go away just because you get older. In fact, for him, it's important to provide a sense of purpose to the activity that he's undertaking. The seventh and last benefit there that I want to talk about is enriching overall quality of life. If you take some or all of these benefits together, the 6 other benefits together, involvement in leisure or sporting communities provides an overall improvement to their quality of life in retirement. And as most of the participants, I think, would tell you, being involved in a sporting or a leisure activity or group, whether that's organised or less formal, has enriched their overall quality of life. A couple of comments here. Say the walking club, for example. It's fitness. It's interacting with people, having good conversation, and then that conversation can go into books we've read. So it sort of covers book club. Book club being leisure activity. And then our garden club with the plants as we see along the way. And we discuss those, and birds, and we're more in touch with the environment. This other comment. And people in the bushwalking club, they have a sense of joy and maybe a sense of, what I like about it is the camaraderie. And then they might have a bit of a stir at each other, but it's all done in good friendship. And so there's this, life is definitely worth living. Great comment to finish my 7 benefits there. I was going to look at barriers to participation, but I think Fleur has done a good job at covering some of those areas as well. And I want to leave a little bit of time for discussion on our tables as well. I might just finish with a few comments from the research participants themselves. As I said, I want to let them do the talking here. According to many of them, involvement in the sporting and leisure communities was essential for a happy, a healthy and a meaningful retirement, but also for enriching their life in their older years. They would also, I think, iterate the importance of social connection in later life. But particularly as you near retirement and in those early years of retirement, because that's what can set you up for the rest of your retirement. But here's a warning from one of the participants that I really loved. He said, I know I needed something else, that is apart from the work at the time. I was very lucky to pick up the golf and get the introduction to that in the last 10 years of my working life, because it just sort of blended over once I retired. But there's a couple there in that group who, when they retired, really struggled because they had put so much into their working life. Take away all that, suddenly overnight they have nothing to replace it. And they become hollow shells for a while, until gradually they integrated themselves into something else. I think most people need to be part of something bigger than themselves. I'll finish with some wise words from one last participant who will have the final say in this before we break up into our table discussion. He said, the functional purpose of the community is less important than the actual encounter people have. And that's what's life-giving. That's where the spirit comes alive. It's the people connection. Whether you're painting or singing or jiu-jitsu or worshipping or talking about social justice or cooking meals for homeless people or whatever. It's that you're doing it with someone else. I'll leave my presentation there on those words. I did have a question, but what I would like is for perhaps you discuss anything you've heard in my presentation now, anything you've heard from the voices of all of those participants, and what words of wisdom you may add to the discussion as well. Thank you.